So we ran those tests, and it turns out that your FSH and LH were so low they were undetectable.
Wow.
And your testosterone was so low, it was about 5% of what it normally should be.
What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we are going to be reacting to 27-year-old man hasn't reached puberty with the doctor. So this is a very old video, but it has, it blew up 25 million views and still cranking on the views today. And I guess this was suggested to me not only by YouTube, because it knew I was publishing those videos recently on the young teens or early 20s guys who had, you know, unexplainable levels of low T. Some of them, you know, had medical conditions, pituitary adenoma. Some were anorexic. Some may have had, you know, exogenous exposure to things that downregulate HPTA function, stuff like that. So in this one, this guy's 27 and presumably never had that spike in testosterone and subsequently DHT that you would have to experience full maturation in your puberty phase. So he's basically full grown in like height and whatnot, but never experienced that like full blown, you know, what would otherwise occur from having a high level of androgens in the body. So for this, I thought it'd be interesting to react to because it ties right into what I was just talking about, and I'll see if this, the doctors have anything interesting insight-wise to give on the situation. Maybe it might have some relatability to some of my recent content. So let's get into it.
Our next topic is something we've all gone through. It's not always easy, talking about puberty. Now, puberty brings body changes. It can feel confusing, even humiliating. What could be worse than that, right? Well, how about never reaching puberty?
My name is Brandon. I'm 26 years old and I have not hit puberty yet. I have been having facial hair growth, very little arm hair, leg hair, very little penile growth, very little testicle growth.
So notice how he says very little penile growth. This is why you should not be inhibiting DHT in puberty. Like even if you have, it's like if you're experiencing aggressive hair loss early, it's like, yeah, it's really shitty if you're experiencing it during puberty, but if there's one time to not inhibit endogenous like physiologic functions and get in the middle of hormonal processes, it would be during puberty where you don't want to fuck with anything, because that is where you can actually permanently inhibit the growth potential of certain things. Now, obviously down the line, you could argue that like there is evidence to suggest that even after puberty, if you somehow, you know, if you had something like this guy or he never made it through puberty, you could otherwise exogenously administer like, you know, like topical DHT creams and shit like that, and maybe get kind of like, you know, make up for lost time in some extent. And that doesn't work for people post-puberty who have like full maturation already, by the way, so don't go out and try that or anything. But for this guy in particular, I just wanted to tie it back because there are a lot of guys who do consider finasteride during puberty, and you may otherwise induce a state of essentially being a, you know, like a almost in between normal and a pseudo hermaphrodite when you do it. It's not going to be as bad as this guy's experiencing, but you may induce a state sort of similar to that, you know, by inhibiting DHT during a time when you otherwise need it maxed out.
No change in my voice. It affects everything I do from the moment I wake up until I go to bed. I have no dating life at all. I have no sex drive at all. I like women, but I don't really have a drive to go and pursue them.
So you have to understand too, though, when I mentioned that before, is that like this guy presumably has no, it's not just a lack of DHT, like he lacks T as well, probably. So he's almost like, you know, sort of like similar to the castrati that you saw in my video before, where I mentioned how they're functioning essentially off of adrenal steroids and kind of residual, like that's literally what they're operating off of as far as androgenic hormones. So for this guy, presumably as some sort of hypogonadism induced by, we'll find out, but he does not have any testosterone to work with. Whereas, you know, if you were a teen using finasteride, it's not like it crushes your testosterone to zero, but I still have the giant disclaimer that do not use finasteride in puberty because the DHT component is still important. It's not just about if you have testosterone or not. Like the pseudo hermaphrodites that are DHT deficient, they had peak test levels and they would still end up with the micropenises and whatnot.
Everyone's different for me. I don't feel like I'm at the maturity level I need to be. I don't I don't look like a guy. I don't feel like it physically. I don't like to go out in public. I don't like to be seen. If I apply for a job, they think I'm younger and they don't want to hire me. They think I don't have the experience. I didn't think it was an issue until my early 20s, because you always read online about late bloomers. You think eventually it's going to happen. You don't think that it's never going to happen. I don't have a job right now, so I have no way of getting medical help. At this point, I'm desperate for answers. I need to know what's wrong with me and how to fix it.
Brandon's situation called for a male reproductive specialist, so we sent him to board-certified urologist Dr. Aaron Spitz.
Hi, Brandon.
Hello.
I'm Dr. Aaron Spitz.
Nice to meet you.
I had a chance to look at the chart you filled out for me,
Okay.
and I understand you're here to see me about concerns about your growth and sexual development. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay. And you have difficulty with getting erections,
Yeah.
and you say that you've never reached a sexual climax.
I don't really have any desire for sex.
Now, one issue that may be a factor here, just looking at your notes,
Okay.
is your potential to be fertile.
Okay.
Is this something that you've thought about or that concerns you?
It does concern me. I would eventually like to have kids if possible.
Surprised you even ask. Does this concern you? It's like, yeah, fuck it, yeah, obviously.
Well, what I'd like to do is examine you.
Okay.
First, I'm just going to
Okay.
feel your neck, feel your glands here. Go ahead and swallow. I'm going to go ahead and listen to your heart and lungs now. I'm going to take a listen to your lungs. Okay, Brandon, I do agree with your assessment. Your genitals are underdeveloped, and it does appear that you have not completely gone through normal puberty changes.
Yes.
One immediate concern I have is your hormone balance, and it is highly likely that your testosterone is too low.
Okay.
So I'm going to have you get some blood tests that look at your testosterone level, as well as the controlling hormones that stimulate your testicles to grow.
Okay.
I'll follow up with you once.
So here when he's talking about the hormones responsible for producing testosterone, he's talking about the gonadotropins, LH and FSH. You guys are probably familiar with them, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormones. So these would be used to determine if the man in question has primary hypogonadism, secondary hypogonadism, and see exactly where the disconnect is. Like, does he have enough luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone? He otherwise just has like non-responsive testes. Or does he not have sufficient gonadotropins and his testes are working just fine? Like, what's the deal? So presumably that's what he's going to be looking for in the blood test results. And this video only has 10 seconds left. So it's kind of, I don't know what the fuck they're gonna, if that's it, that seems.
The testing is complete, and hopefully be able to provide you with a diagnosis as well as a treatment plan.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Okay, so presumably that is just a, I don't know, a teaser. It's not like there was a follow-up that was shown like immediately after in some playlist or anything. So I found the, what I presume to be the follow-up video. It was the most closely related one I could find quickly on the side here. It's Delayed Puberty Explained. The weird thing is it's on the Vasectomy Reversal USA YouTube channel with 3,500 subscribers. So it's not on the doctor's YouTube channel anymore. Or if it's there, I don't know, they got reposted here, I don't know. But anyways, this is definitely the same case. See the same Brandon, same doctor, same everything. So Brandon 27 says he's never gone through puberty despite being 6'3", feels he has the appearance of a 12-year-old boy. Let's see. He believes he has Kalman syndrome, unable to receive medical insurance. Brandon has not seen a doctor about his problem until today. Pediatrician Dr. Jim Sears and urologist Dr. Aaron Spitz explain this rare issue. So Kalman syndrome would be if you did not have enough gonadotropin releasing hormone being sent to the pituitary, consequently resulting in a deficient amount of LH and FSH. So if you don't have enough GnRH going to stimulate the LH and FSH pulsations, then you are not going to downstream have enough actual testosterone production in the testes. So to figure that out, you would have to look at a few different biomarkers, mainly the endocrine parameters of your total T, your LH and FSH, see where the disconnect is, see what's going on. Is it primary? Is it secondary? Is it tertiary? Like, what's going on here? And perhaps even intervene with a HCG or a GnRH agonist to kind of see where the disconnect is again in the HPTA. So hopefully they have some answers for this guy. And typical, therapy, if this is what he has, would be like HRT. There's really not a whole lot you can do. The treatment might vary though, depending on like where the disconnect is and what they determine to be appropriate. So let's see.
And Brandon, first of all, let me just tell you, you are a brave man. Because I'm so glad, 'cause you're 27.
Yeah, be 27 next month.
And you've never had this looked into because you just kept thinking, someday it's going to happen. I'm going to go through puberty.
Yeah.
And this took courage. And I just want to applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Because the first step to figuring out what's going on is addressing it.
Yeah, Brandon, I'm curious, at what point in your life did you first think something's just not right with your body?
Probably mid-teens, 16, 17 years old. I noticed everyone else looks different and my body's not developing at all.
We should clarify that not going through puberty doesn't mean that you can't grow tall. You're a big man. You're 6'3"?
Yeah, 6'3".
So interestingly enough, going through puberty is actually what may prevent you from getting too tall. So this is where it gets into the castrati and kind of how testosterone, aromatization to estrogen, certain growth factors, and the axis between them all sort of dictates, epiphyseal plate closure. So this would dictate, where you essentially stop growing. And then the castrati, these guys who are, not that this guy was castrated at a young age, presumably, but castrati historically that were castrated to preserve their angelic singing voices, they would grow to much taller than you would otherwise expect them to. And they had, low quality bones, but it was because they had this unregulated growth essentially because they had such low estrogen levels the entire time they would have otherwise been going through normal puberty. So this guy may have just had, presumably he had low estrogen going through his entire, teenagehood. So he did not have that, plate closure that would otherwise dictate when he just stops growing in height. So for him, maybe he would have stopped growing as tall if he didn't have this happen. Not that this is a good thing or anything. I'm just saying that it may have had some sort of effect on him reaching the height he did, which is an interesting kind of side effect of having a lack of sufficient hormones. So, and if you want to see more details about that, I go into it in more elaborate detail in my castrati video. I'll put a card up in the corner to the castrati video I did recently. A lot of interesting history that went with that one. So anyways, let's continue.
So
physical development may not coincide with sexual development.
Correct.
And so you ran a number of tests to try to figure out what might be going on with Brandon.
Yeah, exactly. On the physical exam, what I observed is that Brandon has not gone through the typical signs of maturation. He's got a lack of body hair, he doesn't shave, his voice is not deepened, and his genitals are underdeveloped. Also, the fat distribution on the breasts and the hips is not what you would typically see in a mature male. And an interesting finding, too, is that his arm span is a little bit longer than its height, and normally your arm span is your height. And then finally, there was a very interesting sign, which was a lack of a sense of smell.
Yeah.
So then we got blood tests. We focused on FSH and LH. These are two hormones that are secreted by the pituitary gland, which sits right behind the eyeballs in the brain, and they surge during puberty. The FSH, or follicle-stimulating hormone, surges to stimulate the testicles to produce sperm, and the LH, or luteinizing hormone, surges to stimulate those testicles to produce testosterone, which then gives you all of those signs of puberty. The body hair, the deepening of the voice, the enlarging of the sex organs, muscle and bone strength, etc. So we ran those tests, and it turns out that your FSH and LH were so low they were undetectable.
Wow.
And your testosterone was so low, it was about 5% of what it normally should be.
And the takeaway here.
So when he says 5% of normal levels, presumably he's talking about a range, like an average of 600 nanograms per deciliter. That's kind of a generally accepted, average for a guy, a 27-year-old male. So 5% of that, we're talking 30 nanograms per deciliter of total T. So this is essentially just functioning off of adrenal steroids, like I mentioned, or it's similar to some of the cases I presented with the pituitary adenoma case in the young man that I did a video on, as well as some of the severe anorexia case that I covered as well. These are like similar test levels. So for him, you know, it's pretty obvious why he didn't go through puberty properly if he's been operating with these levels his entire teenagehood, which presumably he has been, or else he'd, you know, not be sitting here with the problem he has today. So the LH and FSH being crashed, that gives some indication that the problem is upstream potentially.
Is that understandably, you know, every year you kept waiting.
Yeah.
You kept waiting. And Jim, the question I have for you is when should someone worry?
In a boy, at age 14, if we're not seeing the beginning signs,
Yes.
enlarging of the testicles, then we do something about it. In girls, if we don't see the first sign, which is breast development by age 13, then we run the blood tests. And so normally, you know, we run the tests. Oftentimes they come back normal and we say, okay, you're just a late bloomer. It'll kick in the next couple of years. Sometimes we do find something. And, you know, like in you, your blood test suggested a diagnosis of Kallmann syndrome. And, you know, what that is, it's basically a genetic problem, whereas when your brain was developing in the womb, the neurons that eventually were going to cause those hormones to be stimulated didn't develop.
Oh, okay.
You know, and those hormones and those neurons are actually right next to your smell neurons too. So that little part of your brain just didn't develop.
And so as a physician, you look at Brandon and say, okay, putting two and two together, lack of smell
Yeah.
and not going through puberty,
Yeah.
that leads you to think about Kallmann's.
Yeah. I mean,
but
all the arrows really pointed towards that.
But to complete the diagnosis, Brandon also had an MRI done, which is an important piece of this. And I know we're not going to talk about it until after the break, but MRI is very important here as well.
Well, the reason it's so important is because although Kallmann syndrome fits this pattern, what's much more common is a tumor of the pituitary gland throwing off hormones in men.
So this is what we saw most recently, actually, in one of my videos where we had the young man. Like I said, I think he had 19 nanogram per deciliter test levels, or 14 or something like that. And this was the result of an adenoma that was found during imaging of the pituitary gland. So that is what they're looking for here to kind of rule out, you know, see what's going on.
And because that is much more common, we want to rule out a tumor
Exactly what I fucking said.
of the pituitary, and so we do that with an MRI.
So Brandon did get his MRI. We're going to share those results with him as well as you when we come back.
Okay, so I don't know where the next clip is. I have an update here in my queue. Future Reddit AMA information. Let me see if I can find the next clip. Like, cause there's basically nothing here, man. No, it's Uzoma. Sick, dude. Let's see. I don't know where the update is. It's kind of annoying. Hopefully it is on here somewhere, because now I am very, very interested in seeing the outcome. So, I don't know. I guess let's see this AMA and see if the information's in here.
So I know a lot of people have been requesting me to post update videos since I've been on the Doctor's TV show, and more recently I've actually been contacted by a few people because they post on Reddit about me going on the show, and something that was suggested was doing an AMA. For me, this is something I've actually been considering for quite some time. A couple months ago, one of my friends had actually allowed me to take over their Twitch stream. We were doing like a subscriber Skype call.
So his voice sounds deeper already, so presumably he's on HRT now, but I'm kind of annoyed I can't find the update, one of the top comments. That's not even his final form yet, bro. Let's see. Next time on Dragon Ball Z. You look older and your voice sounds deeper, man. Good for you. I wish you the best. Let's see. Okay, well, I don't know where the update is, but that's kind of annoying. So let me see. Let me just type in update or doctors hasn't reached puberty. Man, he hasn't reached puberty. Oh, here we go. MRI.
Let's look at the MRI here, Dr. Jabbour, and highlight what you're looking at and some concerns you may have had when you saw this MRI.
Thanks, Travis. Well, what we have here is a beautiful midline sagittal view of the brain, which looks normal, but we need to zone in on the pituitary to really look at the anatomy. When we magnify just the pituitary looking from the side, that's front and that's back, we see a normal pituitary encasement, the shape of the pituitary, it's called the sella turcica, and the hypothalamus are in a good position. And on the next image, when we look from the front,
See, this is, if somebody, you know, quite a few people, not quite a few, but there are individuals who saw my videos about, you know, pituitary adenoma, the anorexia-induced hormone deficiency, HPTA suppression, all those videos, and people with, you know, issues have been reaching out, and this is great educational material to like learn about how the body works and what you may want to be looking for to kind of assess your own health profile. Because some people, they just assume, oh, you know, I'm genetically fucked and I just have low T or whatever, and some people don't actually even look into this stuff. Like this guy, it took him years and he had to end up on this, you know, massive show before he even got his stuff checked. So if you are a young male who is experiencing a similar issue with unexplainable low hormone levels, like this is the kind of stuff you want to be looking for.
And for everyone watching right now, you may be looking at this image and thinking to yourselves, oh, that's just a small little part of the brain, but the pituitary dictates the production of so many hormones in the body, including sexual hormones. That's why the focus right now is pituitary gland and what may be going on there. So in this image, there were some things that looked interesting to you.
so there's an asymmetric shape with this bright signal on this side, not seen on that side, but we do have a midline hypothalamic stalk.
You're pointing here with this arrow because there's white over here that you're not seeing on the other side. That's the asymmetry we're talking about. So Dr. Schenning, you're a skull-base expert where the pituitary gland lives. When you're looking at this, what do you see concerning, not concerning?
Fortunately, in this case, in Brandon's case, and I congratulate you, this is a benign lesion. I'll draw it. This is the normal pituitary gland here in yellow. This is the carotid artery here in pink. And there is a hockey stick lesion that you can see just between the two in blue. This hockey stick lesion is a benign overgrowth of the skull, the bone where the pituitary sits. So it is extrinsic to the pituitary.
I want to thank Dr. Jabbour and Dr. Shahinian for helping us out. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, Dr. Spitz, a couple other things I want to look at, because we mentioned before, Brandon, you lack a sense of smell. And this image from the MRI shows potentially why.
That's correct. These bright areas right here, there should be the nerves for the sense of smell, and they're gone. There'll be a darker signal there. And the nerves for the sense of smell, when they form, they also bring along with them the nerves that stimulate the pituitary gland to release those key hormones for puberty and sexual development. And since those nerves for the sense of smell are gone, those nerves that control the pituitary are gone, and that's why Brandon has this syndrome. So testosterone helps us mature, but it doesn't help us get taller. In fact, it stops the growth of the bones by closing the growth plates. But in Brandon's case, because his testosterone is so very low, these growth plates never closed.
So when he says the testosterone dictates the closure of the growth plates, he's more referring to downstream aromatization into estrogen.
I want to see, look at this right here. You see where the bone is a little bit lighter through here? That is an open growth plate. The bone, it should be like the rest of the bone, that darker white. And because you see that growth plate, it means that literally his bones.
He never had the signal from the testosterone to close it down. The other thing you can notice a little bit on here and also on a bone density scan that he had is that the bones themselves are weak. And this is because testosterone is critical in bone strength and bone density. And as a result, Brandon has osteoporosis. This makes him more prone for easily breaking his bones.
This is the same thing we see in the castrati. We see like brittle bones, we see osteoporosis, and this is why bone mineral degradation, we see the use of things like androgens, the things like selective androgen receptor modulators are being used for, are being looked at for hip fractures specifically with LGD. You know, a lot of this stuff interplays very directly, you know, with androgen signaling, anabolic activity, etc.
With testosterone, the bones can strengthen up. Not only does it close the growth plate, but it keeps the bones strong.
And that's the silver lining is, Brandon, there is treatment.
Thank you.
You can be treated and you can go through your sexual maturation, go through puberty, and get on with a more normal life.
Awesome.
What you need is that missing testosterone. And fortunately, it's very simple and straightforward to give that to you. Testosterone comes in a variety of applications. It can be injected, there's pellets, and there's topical applications. This one's very easy to use. It's called Axeron, and it's a pump bottle. And what you're going to do is you're going to put a squirt in that little cup. Okay. You're going to rub it on your underarm. You're going to do it again and rub it on the other. And that's it.
Wow.
So I'm not a really big fan of this kind of an application, to be honest. Like if I was going to use topical anything, it would probably be a compounding pharmacy scrotal application of a cream, as opposed to, you know, an androgel on the arm or inner thigh or something like that, like trying to achieve serum concentrations that I would deem as like optimized, especially for pushing you through puberty. I would not be relying, like I would way rather, and that would be like the worst case scenario. Personally, I think injections are far superior, especially because you can manipulate your SHBG and your free androgen index so much more significantly with exogenous injections than you can with these daily or multiple day applications of these gel/creams. As far as if this guy's going to be fertile or infertile for the rest of his life based on this situation, that is something I will touch on after, see if he touches on it.
Once a day, it's that easy. Now I know you live in a different part of the country, so I've made arrangements with a very good friend of mine who's a top-level expert in testosterone replacement and a condition like yours, Dr. Ed Kim at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and he's agreed to take you on and transition you and get you going, follow your testosterone levels, make sure that all the doses are right, and everything's going to get turned on, okay? You're
Ladies, watch out, ladies. Brandon, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show, and I hope the inspiration that you've provided people at home is if you have a medical problem, and Brandon opened up discussing a problem he's dealt with his whole life, and now there's a chance for a cure and for Brandon to live the kind of life you've been waiting to live. And we look forward to updates, my friend.
Thank you.
Keep us posted, okay?
It's about time.
Dr. Spitz, thank you.
That was pretty cool. That was a lot more informative than I was expecting, to be honest. I didn't think they were going to touch on any of the, you know, explanation of the pituitary output of the gonadotropins, any of that kind of stuff. So interesting to see that. As far as him being on TRT now, like that's going to rectify the hormone deficiency. You know, it's going to help backfill the testosterone, aromatization to estrogen. It's going to cause the plate closure that has otherwise, you know, been skipped over by not having adequate hormone levels. It's going to 5-alpha reduce into DHT and help actually develop those secondary male sexual characteristics. So as far as if he's going to be able to have children though, is he ever going to regain fertility? Is that something he's going to be able to do in his future if he's on TRT and he has this pituitary tumor? Well, that would be determined by, they would have to use like an LH mimic, like HCG, and kind of see if it's going to turn things on enough and have enough intratesticular testosterone production, use a maybe like a recombinant FSH or use HMG alongside it to kind of stimulate the Sertoli cells and then get that concurrent everything going that should be. Because right now with TRT, nothing's really, you have to remember he already has like clinically low gonadotropin levels even going into therapy. So like you can almost guarantee he's infertile going into therapy as is, and then adding TRT on top of the equation, like it's not like he's going to suddenly, you know, develop some sort of ability to have children that he otherwise wouldn't have, in my opinion. I think he would probably need to intervene with some sort of gonadotropin mimetics and kind of see exactly what his testes are actually capable of, which for all we know could be sufficient. You know, we don't know if he's actually going to have primary hypogonadism until they administer something like a LH mimic like HCG to see if the testicles will then respond accordingly. So we don't actually know. That was not determined by this. We just know that he was deficient in the gonadotropins, and that consequently is why he had a low T, but we don't actually know if he is responsive or not to LH and FSH because he never had any to begin with, and we couldn't tell. So hopefully he is responsive. I don't know how likely that would be given the period of inactivity for this long. It's almost like the equivalent of being on, I don't know, like an exogenous something that is shutting down your HPTA for, you know, 13, 14 years or whatever that you should have been, you know, maintaining the proper, structural integrity of everything. So I don't know, that's to be determined, and we will see. Maybe he'll do an update in the future. He said he was going to do a Reddit AMA. I don't know if that happened or not, but that was 5 years ago too. So maybe there's more updates, but obviously, the therapy seems to be working, because the YouTube video with the announcement of the Reddit AMA was several years ago. So maybe he did, provide some insight in that. I'm sure he has a lot more insight on his condition now and what's going on, what he can expect. But that would be interesting to see a follow-up. That was a cool episode to see. Honestly, I've never watched that show fully. I've just seen clips here and there, and that was a cool one. So anyways, like and subscribe, comment, helps the algorithm when you guys do. Thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Instagram at @moreplates_more dates, Facebook, Snapchat, BitChute, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below, including my TRT clinic. It's all telemedicine from the comfort of your own home. We have very qualified patient care coordinators and doctors who I've vetted myself, including some that I've actually met via some of those videos I did relatively recently, where we talked about hyperprolactinemia, when we talked about pituitary adenomas, when we talked about all that kind of stuff. I met some qualified, candidates through that, and it's awesome to see my content actually have a viewership of, doctors, people who are interested in this stuff, highly intelligent individuals who are actually finding their way into my community and being a part of the discussion. So that's awesome to see, and is makes me very proud of the way this channel is going, to be honest. Anything else I'm associated with too, it's all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.